This is edition 33 of the Father Cory Book Club. Today I'm reviewing The Complete Father Brown Stories by G.K. Chesterton, originally published in various sources from 1910 to 1936. This Wordsworth Classics edition was published in 2006. For a broad portion of his literary career, G.K. Chesterton was fascinated with mystery stories. The best known of his entries into the genre are his short stories about Father Brown, the parish priest of a small country town. And yet, oddly enough, for detective stories, Father Brown is not a detective, nor does he use the methodology of the detective in order to solve crimes, nor is he really out to solve crimes at all. Chesterton created the character of Father Brown as a sort of counterpoint to Sherlock Holmes, where Holmes is acerbic and even abrasive in his dealings with people, brought to life on screen most recently and effectively by Benedict Cumberbatch's portrayal. Father Brown is the consummate gentle shepherd of the flock, showing people a father's care appropriate to his ministry as the parish priest. Where Holmes is the consulting detective who makes a living solving crimes that Scotland Yard and other civil authorities are unable to, given the complexity or subtlety of the case, Father Brown is simply a parish priest who is approached by his people with difficulties in their lives, for which he offers his wise and gentle counsel. Where Holmes is a product of the rationalistic modern age, using science and inductive reasoning, and not deduction, as he's commonly said to be using, and I'll give a Kit Kat to the first person who can write in and tell me the difference, Father Brown represents an approach to dealing with crime that flows from using his powers of reasoning in conjunction with the wisdom attained from his faith, and the instincts about human nature that come from years of loving service to his people. Holmes makes it his business to solve crimes. It seems that Father Brown simply happens to do it, and simply describes him well. Chesterton speaks of his character as a very plain-looking man, soft-spoken and kind of stumbling about, and yet his plain appearance masks a great clarity of insight, possible only for a man of deep empathy for his fellow man and an even deeper faith in God. Between 1910, over a decade prior to his conversion to Catholicism, and 1936, the year of his death, Chesterton published 53 short stories about Father Brown. The model for Father Brown was Monsignor John O'Connor, a parish priest who was instrumental in Chesterton's conversion, and indeed, given the volume of these stories written before his conversion, it's not hard to see the influence of O'Connor upon Chesterton. Chesterton himself is also partly the model for Father Brown. He once remarked that he used Father Brown to convey his own views about the world. As with some of his other pre-conversion writing, he certainly had something of an instinctual attachment to a Catholic worldview, even before he had arrived at putting it into Catholic terms himself. Some of the latter stories were produced mainly for financial reasons, and Chesterton was embarrassed at the lack of quality in them compared to his earlier work. The earlier stories, however, represent some of the best writing of its kind, not just in the Chestertonian corpus, but in the entire history of detective stories. While Father Brown hasn't gotten as much exposure or airplay as Holmes, I seem to recall hearing that the Benedict Cumberbatch BBC Sherlock series was like the 270th different incarnation on screen or on stage of Sherlock Holmes. He certainly deserves to take his place, Father Brown does, amidst the pantheon of the great fictional detectives. I would be remiss, however, if I didn't note that there has been more attention given to Father Brown in the last few years, with a rather excellent television series being produced by the BBC, featuring the also rather excellent Mark Williams in the titular role. Unfortunately, the series suffers somewhat as it goes on from deviations not just from the source material, but from the ideological ground of the source material and its author. While the first few episodes stay faithful to Chesterton's stories, and thus his Catholic thought, in later episodes, more and more elements foreign to Catholicism are incorporated into how Father Brown deals with people and solves mysteries, so that the interior core of the stories is lost while the surface is preserved. If you watch the newer series, stick to the initial episodes that stick to the source material. If you want to see more consistently good interpretations of the story and character, the 1974 series starring Kenneth More tends to be more faithful. Also notable is the 1954 film Father Brown, with the title character being portrayed by Alec Guinness, Sir Alec Guinness rather, who would go on to become famous in the US for playing Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original and far superior to their successors, and some, including myself, would say only valid Star Wars movies. That's a shot across the bow for people who like the prequels or the J.J. Abrams sequels. This movie was instrumental in Sir Alec Guinness's own conversion to Catholicism, Father Brown, not Star Wars. While on a break between filming scenes on location in the small French town that served as the backdrop for the film, Sir Alec took a walk, still in costume as Father Brown, wearing a cassock and a saturno, the round hat of the Roman cleric. A little boy walked up to him, took Sir Alec by the hand, and chattered to him in French, which Sir Alec didn't speak, as they walked the length of the main street. And then the little boy waved goodbye and returned to his house. Sir Alec was deeply impressed at how comfortable the boy had been with him since he was dressed as a priest, and the respect shown to someone who at least appeared to be a cleric. This would serve as one small incident among many that led him into the church. So this has been edition 33 of Father Cory's Book Club. Be on the lookout for the rest of our Chesterton series. I've got, I think, three more titles to review in the Chesterton series. And then after Easter, I'm planning something big. I've mentioned that I wanted to resurrect my Fahrenheit 451 lectures, so I'm thinking of doing those as a series of short talks, probably a little over twice the length of these reviews. But I'm going to do a series on Fahrenheit 451, and then I'd also like to do a series on a series I've given before in a couple of contexts on those books on rest that I reviewed some time ago in the bulletin. You can look back in our old bulletins. If you go to the parish website, there's a link there. You can look back in the old bulletins and find the book club in those. But I did a series on rest involving the work of the Rabbi Abraham Heschel, the philosopher Joseph Pieper, and a book by Pope Benedict XVI that was a series of sermons he gave while he was, right after he had been appointed to the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith. And they're all on that theme of rest. So I worked that into a one talk, but I'll do it as a series. But a couple of other things coming up, really exciting. But thank you for your kind attention and your engagement with this. Again, if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. If you have any suggestions for things I could review in the future, I've already gotten a couple of good suggestions that I'm going to try to work into the rotation. So thank you very much, and God bless.